Number 1.
Laura was last seen in New Castle, Pennsylvania on January 7, 1993. She was a high school student at the time and the mother of a 9-month-old son. Her case was classified as a runaway for many years after her disappearance, although she had no history of such behavior and she didn't take any belongings with her. In September 2010, two suspects, Joseph N. Marshall Jr. and his friend Sean M. McDonough, were charged with Laura's murder. Photographs of both of them are posted with this case summary. Laura knew them, and she was last seen en route to play cards with them. The homicide came to light when Joseph's wife, Shannon Marshall, went to the police in the summer of 2010 and told them what she knew. She had known about the crime since January 1993. During their engagement, Joseph had told her he killed someone but didn't name his victim. Later he told her more, stating McDonough had persuaded Laura to come over and they took her to a cabin in the woods, Shenango Township, Pennsylvania. There, McDonough stabbed Laura to death and sexually assaulted her corpse. Several months later, McDonough returned to the shallow grave where he'd buried Laura, removed her skull, teeth and hands, and moved them elsewhere. In the summer of 1993, Shannon accompanied Joseph and McDonough when they dug up the rest of Laura's body and dumped it in a ravine. Shannon didn't come to the authorities with her information until July 2010. She had decided to divorce Joseph and was afraid for her life. She agreed to wear a wire and recorded conversations with her husband and McDonough that implicated them. She has not been charged in the homicide. Joseph was charged with criminal homicide, murder, conspiracy and abuse of a corpse. McDonough faced the same charges, as well as 2 counts of rape. He was living in Thibodaux, Louisiana at the time of his arrest and had never been arrested before. In February 2015, McDonough pleaded guilty to third-degree murder and was sentenced to 8 to 16 years in prison, with credit for time served. He spent more than 4 years in jail awaiting the resolution of the case. Later that month, Marshall pleaded guilty to misdemeanor abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to 1 to 2 years in prison and given credit for 2 years of time served, as a result, was released from custody. All the other charges against him were dropped. The prosecution didn't believe there was enough evidence to convict him of murder. Authorities believe Laura's body may not be recoverable, as a farmer dumped a demolished barn and a large amount of earth into the ravine after her body was put there. Foul play is suspected in Laura's case due to the circumstances involved. Her disappearance remains classified as a runaway with many agencies.
Number 2.
McIntosh was last seen in Medford, Oregon on March 22, 2013. He apparently left his residence that day. Some reports are that he was going to Missouri to visit a cousin, but he told a friend he was going to drive to Georgia to meet a woman he knew online. At 2 p.m. that same day, McIntosh's white Ford Explorer with the Oregon license plate number 228 GCM was found pulled off to the side of the road in the Shasta Lake, California area. It was out of gas and there was nothing packed inside. McIntosh has never been heard from again. Since his disappearance, his cellular phone and credit card haven't been used, and he left groceries sitting out at home. In the years before he went missing, McIntosh developed a relationship with a person who lived outside the US, someone he referred to as his girlfriend. Over the course of 2 or 3 years, he sent this individual over $500,000, clearing out his pension and savings. Law enforcement warned him he might be being scammed, but McIntosh continued to send money. He later said he felt threatened. McIntosh worked as a doctor in White City, Oregon for 39 years. He was the director of the Veterans Affairs Southern Oregon Rehabilitation Center and Clinic until to his retirement in 2012. His behavior prior to his disappearance had been changing, and it's possible his mental capacity was diminished. He may have been carrying a .22 caliber handgun at the time of his disappearance, and suicide is considered a possibility in his case. His case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Masa Ler, a construction contractor, traveled from his home in Northern Virginia to Ocean City, Maryland in January 2005 to install roofing and siding. He was last seen at the Bull on the Beach restaurant in Ocean City on January 31. He was having dinner with one of his employees, Jose Damian Hernandez. He has never been heard from again. He was reported missing on February 3. After his disappearance, police found evidence of a violent struggle and a great deal of Masa Ler's blood in his condominium at the C Mark on 63rd Street in Ocean City. Most of the blood was in the master bedroom next to the bed, but drops were also found in the kitchen and dining room. The stains were still damp when they were discovered. All the bedding and linens, as well as a large futon mattress and a kitchen knife, were found to be missing from the condominium. Another large knife was found on the floor inside the residence. The amount of blood in Masa Ler's home indicated that he could not have survived his injuries. Hernandez used Masa Ler's credit card after his disappearance. He later returned it to Masa Ler's family, saying he had been given permission to use it. He was arrested for possession of stolen property on February 8, 2005. Authorities found Masa Ler's van, which had disappeared with him, parked at Hernandez's apartment in Columbus, Ohio. They also discovered that Hernandez had pawned some of Masa Ler's work tools the same day he disappeared. Hernandez was convicted of the charges in June 2005 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He has since been released and deported to his native El Salvador. There is a second suspect in the theft, Jose Roberto Orellana Romero, also known as Beto. Romero worked on Masa Ler's contracting crew and was one of the last people to see him prior to his disappearance. Romero is wanted for questioning about Masa Ler's disappearance and the theft of his belongings. Both Hernandez and Romero are from El Salvador and were in the United States illegally in 2005. Authorities did not learn Romero's true identity until August 2005. He was initially thought to be named Roberto Garcia. He is described as 18 to 25 years old, with straight black hair and a medium build. Romero remains at large. He was last known to be living in Columbus, Ohio, but he may have returned to El Salvador. Hernandez and Romero are the prime suspects in Masa Ler's presumed murder. Police believe Masa Ler's body was wrapped in bedding and dumped somewhere within a 30-mile radius of Ocean City. However, there is insufficient evidence to charge anyone in the disappearance. Masa Ler's family says it is uncharacteristic of him to be out of touch with them. He was declared legally dead in June 2005 and a death certificate was issued. Foul play is suspected in his case, but it remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Janet was last seen in Somerset, Pennsylvania on June 30, 1985. She disappeared with her 10-year-old daughter, Marissa Alexandria Shugley. The family had been living at a rental property near Hidden Valley Resort, then they moved to the now-defunct Coleman Motel on Route 601. Janet had been going to a priest at St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church for counseling on a regular basis and had made arrangements to meet the priest the morning she and her daughter disappeared. According to Janet's husband, Francis J. Frank Shugley, that morning he and Janet fought about Marissa. Janet spit in his face and he slapped her. Janet and Marissa then left the motel and walked across the highway to Dan's Auto Sales. Janet told the owner she was trying to find a ride to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where her relatives lived. He tried to use a CB, Citizens Band, radio to get her a ride, but was unable to find one. Janet said they were going to see the priest, and she and Marissa walked off towards the Turnpike interchange. They never been heard from again. Janet and Frank have 2 sons who were 4 and 5 years old in 1985. The boys later told police their father didn't return to their motel room until late that night and that when he did, his clothes were muddy. The next day, Frank thoroughly cleaned the room, even washing the walls. Then he checked out of the motel and went to Jeannette, Pennsylvania, where he's originally from. After a day or two there, he took his sons and moved to an apartment in Pittsburgh. Frank reported his wife and daughter missing to the Pennsylvania State Police on July 3. Between that time and August 10, he contacted local media outlets, women's shelters, the Salvation Army, the Pittsburgh Police, the FBI, and the CIA, asking for assistance in locating Janet and Marissa. On August 31, Frank met Theodore Schoenfeld and another man while they were fishing at a Pittsburgh park and offered them $2,000 each and round-trip tickets to Hawaii if they would kill his Janet, injure her aunt and uncle, and kidnap Marissa. He said he thought Janet was hiding Marissa from him with her relatives' assistance. Schoenfeld played along with Frank's plan for several meetings, then told the police about it. He introduced 2 undercover police officers to Frank as hitmen, and the officers secretly recorded Frank's solicitations. In mid-September, Frank was arrested for solicitation to commit murder, kidnapping and assault. While he was in jail, he allegedly told 3 other inmates he got rid of Janet and Marissa. One inmate told investigators Frank had asked him whether he could be convicted of murder and the bodies were never found. Frank chose to go to trial before a judge rather than a jury. He was convicted of all charges. According to investigators, he has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, suffers from delusions and lives in a fantasy world. He served part of his sentence at a hospital for the criminally insane in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. He now lives in the Pittsburgh area. Foul play is suspected in Janet and Marissa's disappearances, and Frank remains the prime suspect in their cases. Authorities think his attempt to hire people to kill Janet and kidnap Marissa after their disappearances may have been an attempt to divert suspicion from himself. In 2019, Janet's Penn Joint junior high school class ring was turned over to the police. A photo of the ring is posted with this case summary. A family had found it more than 20 years earlier, and after they tried to find the ring's owner and discovered it belonged to a missing person, they told the police. Authorities haven't disclosed the location where the ring was found, but they hope this new clue might lead to answers in Janet and Marissa's disappearances. Photos of Marissa were unavailable. She was 5'0" and 92 pounds in 1985 and has brown hair and brown eyes. Her and her mother's disappearances remains unsolved.
Number 5.
Luis resided with his mother, Catherine Elizabeth Kitty Sanchez, and her former boyfriend, William Christopher Crumland, in Tracy, California. Photos of Catherine and Crumland are posted with this case summary. Luis was last seen on June 6, 2001. Authorities believe he was staying in room 26 of the Hacienda Inn Motel in the 600 block of West 11th Street in Tracy with the couple. Luis has never been heard from again. His family members reported his disappearance to authorities in July 2002. It is not clear why his relatives waited more than 1 year before contacting law enforcement officials. Authorities determined that Luis was a victim of homicide and charged Crumland with his murder on July 22, 2002. Investigators allege that Crumland killed Luis inside their motel room, then buried the child in a nearby field. Catherine was charged with child abuse endangerment. Authorities believe that she assisted Crumland with Luis's burial. Catherine told investigators that she was intoxicated at the time and could not remember the exact location of her son's body. She and Crumland were also charged with unlawful disposal of human remains. Catherine resided in Manteca, California, and Crumland lived in Hayward, California at the time of their arrests. The couple kept Luis's death a secret until his disappearance was reported. Witnesses stated that Catherine told them Luis was residing with her mother later during the summer of 2001. Luis's grandmother spoke to Catherine sporadically and said she had not seen her grandson since June 2001. Investigators believe that Luis was buried in an area near the Delta Mendota Canal, along the east side of Tracy Boulevard, south of the Tracy Municipal Airport in Madera County, California. The field was searched in August 2002 and bone fragments were discovered, but authorities said that the materials were not related to Luis's case. Officials halted the search a short time later. They stated they did not plan to search again unless they got more specific information as to where the child's remains were. Catherine pleaded guilty to being an accessory to murder. She admitted helping Crumland dispose of Luis's remains after the child was killed. Crumland pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and causing great bodily injury to a child and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Luis has never been located.
Number 6.
Moran was last seen in Coachella, California on May 10, 2017. She disappeared with her boyfriend, Jonathan Reynoso. The pair left Moran's mother's home in Coachella so Moran could drive Reynoso to his home in Palm Desert, California, but they never arrived and has never been heard from again. Riverside County Sheriff's investigators said Wednesday the case of Jonathan Reynoso and Audrey Moran remains perplexing. Sheriff's Lieutenant Walt Mendez told reporters on Wednesday afternoon in Riverside that the disappearance is still a missing persons case 2 years later. "I'm hopeful we'll have a resolution for the family. I just hope it's sooner rather than later," he said. Reynoso and Moran's family members referred any questions to investigators. Both are still listed on the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Systems database. Todd Matthews, its director of case management and communications, said investigations into missing people have historically been across the board and occasionally remain active years after a disappearance. "Families should never give up a degree of hope," Matthews said Wednesday. "I've seen decades-old cases resolved. It's more and more common to see short-term and long-term cases resolved." Reynoso and Moran's disappearance drew major interest in large part because they went missing without a trace and there was never a definitive explanation of where they went and why they couldn't be found. Investigators believe any activity involving the disappearance occurred between May 10 and May 11. Mendez told reporters in January 2018 there was no reason for the couple to voluntarily leave their loved ones. He reiterated that stance on Wednesday, saying investigators believe the disappearance involved suspicious circumstances. "People don't just disappear," Mendez said. Family members last heard from the couple on May 10, 2017, when Moran left her sister's Coachella home to pick up Reynoso at an unspecified location after he returned from Brawley. Reynoso's family believe he may not have been in Brawley. They say a pizza box found at his house indicates he may have had it delivered around the time he was supposed to be out of town. Mendez said authorities haven't determined whether Reynoso was in Brawley. Moran told her family she was going to take Reynoso to his Palm Desert home, but cell phone pings showed she never placed or received phone calls from outside the eastern Coachella Valley, according to Indio police, who investigated the disappearance before the sheriff's department took the lead. The last contact anyone had with the couple was when Moran's sister received an older selfie of Moran and Reynoso at his Palm Desert home. Moran drove a 2010 GMC Terrain SUV, which police found May 12. It was parked along westbound Interstate 10, west of Oak Valley Parkway in Beaumont. A bloodhound picked up the couple's scents, but the trail ended west of the SUV, which had gas in its tank and appeared to be drivable. No cell phones were located, and there was no suspicious activity when police checked the couple's financial records. Officials are investigating how the couple left the area near the SUV. Friends and family circulated flyers with the couple's photos and shared details via social media. They also distributed bracelets that had Reynoso and Moran's names and a phone number for people to call if they had information. Tips to investigators have come from across California, including from strangers who believe they spotted the couple. Social media exploded with comments from people speculating over why Reynoso and Moran disappeared, and unsubstantiated rumors often arose. Mendez acknowledged baseless speculation was prevalent, although he declined to identify and shoot down specific examples. He urged the public not to spread rumors and gossip and instead to only discuss facts behind the case. The lieutenant maintains a resolution to the case isn't out of the question. "To my very core, I believe it's solvable," he said.
Number 7.
Heron was last seen at 11 p.m. on August 29, 2002, in Catskill, New York. She was driving her car, a black 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee with New York license plates numbered X233UV. The vehicle had no fog lamps and minor damage to the front passenger side bumper. A photograph of a car similar to Heron's is posted with this case summary. She was driving westbound on State Route 23 in the Jefferson Heights area of Catskill, New York, having just left her job after finishing her shift. She was employed part-time as a nurse at the Columbia Green long-term health care facility at the time of her disappearance. Heron has never been heard from again. The drive from the nursing facility to Heron's home in Freehold, New York is about 12 to 15 miles. On the night of August 29 to 30, there was fog and rain in that area, and she may have taken a shortcut to avoid it. Heron was supposed to arrive home at 11:30 p.m., but did not. Her husband reported her missing at 6 a.m. the next morning. She left behind 3 children whom she was reportedly dedicated to and is considered missing under suspicious circumstances. The day of her disappearance, she had just received a substantial pay raise, and she had a doctor's appointment the next day, which she never showed up for. She has not used her cellular phone or credit cards since she disappearance. Police investigating Heron's disappearance say her husband has been uncooperative in the investigation. He denies this, pointing out that he has taken a polygraph about his wife's disappearance and allowed authorities to search his property 3 times. He has not been named a suspect in Heron's disappearance, and neither has anyone else, but her case is being investigated as a homicide. It is unknown what happened to Heron. Her vehicle disappeared with her and was never found. Some reports state that Heron was last seen in Cairo, New York.